Hi everyone. This is an experiment. I guess everything I do on this channel is an experiment, but it's a big one for me, and I'm very curious to see how it will work. And so what I'm doing is I want to write a book with you publicly, in not real time, but in a more or less synchronous way, or semi-synchronous way, in which I put an idea out there, and if you're interested, you can respond to it, or at least think about it, and kind of follow along these chapters as I post them on my YouTube page. And the idea is that I want to write a memoir, which is, I know you're all like, oh my, you're all in shock. Ryan, a memoir? I know. I loathe with a fiery passion all forms of confessional art. That's just me. I'm not, that's a taste thing. It's not I don't think less of artists who make confessional art. I think some incredibly powerful work has been made in that vein. It's just not my thing, right? It's a taste thing. It's like, I like jazz, I don't like, whatever country, or I love country and I hate rock. I mean, it's just how we're built, so it's not a judgment. In any case, with that proviso aside, the book, at least the title that I have formulated in this moment, or up to now, and which will change probably almost certainly, I want to call Unknown Pleasures: A Life in Nature and Technology, or maybe Technology and Nature. Actually, that's better. Technology and Nature. Nature last. Nature is the culminating idea and category and sort of goal of all of this, and my life, and of my life. I've come to realize that I have had the enormous privilege of living several lives, spent in domains that seem quite disparate. Obviously, I have my professional career as artist, sometime artist, art historian, and critic. And so professionally, I've devoted my life to art since I was a teenager. But that has happened in a curious way. I've come to realize that art is the least important thing in my life. It's also the least interesting thing. What my life is really about is living with, and without sounding hopefully too pretentious, bearing witness to the wonders of technology, and ultimately, and here I'm giving away the end of the book, or the thesis or argument, if I want to put it in academic terms, technology is a path that led me to nature. And this happened because my experience of witnessing the sublime aspects of nature and the absolutely wondrous aspects of technology have occurred in parallel throughout my entire life, from my earliest memories up until the present moment. And these parts of my life, art, technology, and nature, particularly as the art part developed, the art became a career, my life became increasingly disjointed. And what in childhood had been a unified experience of nature and technology, and let's call it beauty, to escape the narrowness of art as a word and as a concept, those were unified. It was, I had a very fortunate and privileged childhood. It was idyllic. But as I made my way into the world, I became less and less confident and unified as a person. These different domains of my life became disjointed. And it's only now, I'm 51, that I've reached a point where I can see how the pieces might fit together. And that's what this book is about. It is about understanding that these things I've witnessed and experienced that are so humbling, because they're more than I deserve. There's nothing special about me. I'm just some guy. Actually are part of a larger picture that gives meaning to my existence. I'm not at all interested in writing a story about me. That's merely a vehicle. I inherently am uninteresting. It's what I've witnessed that I think is interesting, and that I hope speaks to other people who have had similar experiences. So there's the preamble, and the form of it will be exactly what you see. I want this to be spontaneous. I don't want it to be university lecture-y. I want it to be based on memories that come to me. And so this will be a challenge for me as well, because I don't know how to do this. I haven't done this before, and I am trained in the communication that is the book, printed matter. And it was a cylinder, maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, 2 feet wide or so, plastic, with a clear window that opened, a curved window, and inside through it I could see stacks of platters. This is a hard disk from the 80s. It would have been the early 80s, and it represented, I now know this, having sort of studied this history a little bit in order to have to teach it. Looking back, when I saw this at my dad's work in the early 80s, it was part of, I remember the thing itself because it was so unusual, but also because it had to do with knowledge and writing. And on these platters, the ancestor of the hard disk drive, kind of as we know it, which is really gone the way of the dodo as everyone goes to chip-based memory. But this was leading technology in the day, or it was just getting old at that point, I guess, a little bit. But it was as an object, and the sort of ideas and the technological accomplishment that it represented was really striking to me. Because I was shown it in the larger context of how computing worked in that moment within a university. And of course, this is the day, and these were the days in which there was a central server, which was massive, and it was difficult to access. Resources were limited. You had to sort of dial in, and it was a timeshare type of thing. I'm going to misremember details. But what I remember in my dad explaining how all of that worked, showing me a monitor. I remember seeing a CRT monitor, the old green ones, green on black, with word processing software on it. This is the first time I'd seen anything like that, and the ability to have a page on the screen. So it was a typewriter, but it was not at all a typewriter, because you needed to learn a language to use it in order to move the cursor around. There were commands and so forth. It was not intuitive in the way of, what we're used to today. So everything presumed a level of expertise and training, erudition, and esoteric knowledge, and it was also industrial. It was, there was something very 19th century about it. There's a kind of central engine. It's like a 19th century factory, and information is a kind of material that is fed into it, and then out it processes it and produces a product out the other end. And it's spatialized. There is the central server is located somewhere. And if you're dialing into it, you have an acute sense of where you are relative to it. You're also aware of the physicality of it because of its inherent limitations. The difficulty of access, of getting server time, and this kind of thing. So the aspects of privation, all of this is about the dimensions of technology that I encountered for the first time. It was new to me, that made it opaque, but that also made it wondrous, and at the same time rooted in its physical nature and the way it was spatialized in its design, which is very Star Trek, in its scale. I mean, it's almost the size of a sort of human torso. There's a bodily kind of relationship to it. And what all of this was enormously formative, seeing this huge old-fashioned thing that was a physical way to function as memory. At a high level. I think that's part of the wonder of the experience, is that it was all at a high level. This is what scientists, this is the gear that scientists use in order to uncover the secrets of the universe. It was special because of what it was designed to do and who it was designed for, and it was alienating for that reason as well. I didn't understand it. I lacked the knowledge, and there was a lesson there as well, that technology is bound up with social structures and institutions, and that either sort of by virtue of technology being inaccessible because of cost, for example, or because of other factors, cultural factors, etc., the question, technology has always raised issues of access. Who gets to use it? Who is prevented from using it? And whose aims does it serve? So I learned that lesson about technology as well, which was very useful, because I was very privileged to access technology in a way that other my peers couldn't in the period. And that was simply because where my dad worked, and my uncle as well worked in technology. Two uncles worked in technology. They were they're twins, or rather they're three brothers, sorry. Two of them are twins. And I think of them as the three wizards. They're the ones who, each in different ways, inducted me into wondrous worlds of technology, that gave me a behind the curtain sort of view of these incredible things. And this is not just in childhood, but over the arc of my life, that either they or the kind of doors that they opened for me in various ways have exposed me to these moments of technological transformation that I still struggle to grasp sort of the meaning of, the import of, and even through, and particularly through formalized study, that is through the creation of an undergraduate design history course in the history of writing technologies, which is leading to a book which is related to what this memoir is. The memoir will be the kind of personal dimension underlying the more scholarly project of the book, which is a global history of technologies of writing from prehistory up to the present. The physicality of technology, its social embeddedness, of course, are formative in this memory, but what also matters in the memory is that it's about writing, and that is a hard disk is simply one stage in the development of technologies of writing. Its aim is it serves the same function that cuneiform tablets served the Mesopotamians, which is to let writing move in space, and to transcend the limits of orality, speech, which is limited by earshot, and also to transcend the limits of time. Speech is ephemeral. It vanishes like as soon as you say something, it's gone, like a drop in the stream. And so writing preserves it in time. So writing allows the Mesopotamian ambassador to send a complex message to the neighboring city-state, and know that it will get there word for word and endure. This is exactly the same function, broadly construed, that the hard disk from the early 80s is fulfilling. So my exposure to technology, I realized looking at the various moments of my life, has really been focused on technologies of writing, of recording information, preserving information, transmitting information, and displaying information. And of course, all of this includes images, video, sound, but is based on a sort of technological problem of how do you record, how do you preserve and represent symbolic inscription, symbolic expression. How do you do that? How do you move beyond the limits of the oral world? So it's not just a history of any technology it's not just any kind of technology that has shaped my life. It is particularly this technology of human communication. And the sort of primal scene of the encounter with a hard disk and its situation within these kind of in a spatialized and disparate sort of context in which a monitor is in one room, the central server is in another building. An associated memory of this is seeing on my dad's desk. This was somewhat later. This was in the 90s when email was just starting to emerge. A letter in an envelope, a paper envelope that said email on it, and I was just baffled by that. What is this new status of written document? That sort of paradoxical. It's a regular letter, a paper letter, just like any others, but it comes from email somehow. So how did that work? Where was it sent from, and to whom? And then why was it printed? And what does this mean, this kind of weird intersection of old and new technologies? And that moment as well is very important, because it's the seed of a kind of perception that only came to me much later, again, when I was teaching this stuff, which is that technology is always compound. It always sort of is either an iteration of earlier technologies or an incorporation of earlier technologies. And so the time dimension of technologies of writing is always kind of layered, laminar.